Miracle for his mother.
You guys want to go ahead and spell them for us?
DaQuan, my first name. Huey for my last name.
My name's Miracle, Miracle, last name Farr, Farr.
So we're here today officially, and let me back up for a moment. We're here today officially because we sought an audience with the district attorney's office, who the gentleman here, Mr. Rochelle, is not available today. We did not have an appointment. There was no one in his office that could receive the information, specifically that we wanted to open up a complaint against the officer and the department that used excessive force against Mr. Huey. Now, it's normally, as they explained to us, their protocol to receive a complaint from an agency, that agency being either the department itself, the Texarkana PD, or from the sheriff's and or ranger's office. We did have a chance to speak with the sheriff actually just a moment ago, and the sheriff's deferred over to the ranger's office. We have not had a chance to speak with the ranger's office, but the DA also indicated that they would like to get a complaint for the rangers. We know that there is at least probable cause that a crime was committed in this jurisdiction, specifically the crime of excessive force of a felony assault resulting in serious bodily injury to Mr. Huey. That brings it under the direct domain of this district attorney's office. It is their responsibility then to direct the agencies to investigate, gather the necessary information, and make a determination whether or not to present that information to a grand jury in order to seek a criminal indictment against any offender. This is what all citizens expect. And when law enforcement is engaged in behavior that is questionable, when they're engaged in behavior that is criminal, we expect the same protections to be afforded citizens who are the victims of law enforcement as they are when normal citizens are the culprits. In other words, law enforcement should be actually held to a higher standard of justice, not a lower standard of justice. Instead, what we have is in a situation where every witness has described Mr. Huey as being a peacemaker in the incident in which he was injured, as being someone who was attempting to diffuse a very hostile environment. He walked away grievously injured and then criminally charged. He was mischarged, inappropriately charged, falsely charged with the crimes of resisting arrest, something that he never attempted to do. We don't believe the evidence, video, witness testimony supports the crime of resisting arrest and disorderly conduct. Those are charges that I am accustomed to seeing when law enforcement makes a mistake, when law enforcement uses excessive force. Instead of owning up to the responsibility, properly investigating, then reporting to the district attorney's office, they then make the victim himself the culprit, the criminal. That is not okay. We expect, this community expects a greater standard of justice in Texarkana, and we're going to stand together and demand it. This is day one. This is step one, where we come to the district attorney's office and we remind him of his responsibility to protect young black men like DaQuan Huey. This will be something that we continue to come forward with. We will speak with the sheriff's office. We will speak with the ranger's office. We will organize as a community until DaQuan has justice. His life has been permanently altered. The doctors have told him that his left eye, that he's blind in his left eye, the sight will not come back. Because of the injury to his left eye, it's causing additional strain on his right eye, and he stands the possibility, without further surgery, of losing sight in both eyes as well. At 17 years old, as a peacemaker, as someone who was there to defuse a problem, this should not have happened. That JPX gun that was used against him was a weapon designed to give law enforcement an alternative to lethal force. Everyone who has ever used a gun, everyone who has ever trained anyone how to use the gun has described that there is a proper protocol for using that weapon. You must be at least 5 feet away from the suspect before discharging the projectile. Why? Because projectiles leaving that weapon leave it at rates upward 450 miles per hour. If you're directly on a suspect within 5 feet, you can cause serious bodily injury, like the kind of injuries that DaQuan suffered. When the weapon was used against DaQuan, it was pressed directly against his face. That officer should have known. He should have known not to use the weapon in that way. That's doing such would not be safe, that it could seriously hurt this young man and result in the kind of injuries that it did. When he chose to use that weapon, in such a way, he committed a crime, and we expect him to be held criminally and civilly accountable. At this time, we'll take questions.
So the outcome for justice would be for this
The
case?
first thing that should have already happened is the false charges against DaQuan Huey should be dropped. There's no evidence whatsoever, besides the blanket allegations from law enforcement protecting themselves, that he was guilty of resisting arrest or disorderly conduct. There was certainly disorder in the area, but DaQuan was serving as a peacemaker. Those charges need to be dropped immediately. There should be a proper criminal investigation led by the district attorney's office, not by law enforcement itself. Law enforcement is responsible for gathering evidence for the district attorney's office, but there should be a proper investigation launched against the officer and his use of force. Most departments have a civil rights division where cases of excessive force are investigated by district attorneys themselves, because we know that law enforcement is not competent to investigate themselves for misconduct. Now, law enforcement officers should be directed by the DA's office, but they certainly should not be directing the DA's office about whether or not a crime was committed in their jurisdiction. And so we expect that investigation to go forward, for the proper evidence to be presented to a grand jury, and let the people of Texarkana make a decision whether or not criminal allegations should be brought against that officer.
So we can ask Mr. Huey,
Sure.
what happened that night?
That's still going to be too broad. And I don't want to walk through fact by fact pattern. You can ask a more specific question if you like.
Was it a large crowd? I know officers said it was about 80 people out there in a fight. I don't know, was
It
there?
was a large crowd, but it wasn't 80 people. Approximately about 20 at most.
Any other questions?
And he said that it's altered your life. Can you kind of speak to that? How has that affected you?
Can't see out my left eye. It's hard to navigate, like move around. I run into things on my left side. Can't.
DaQuan, what were your plans before this happened? What were your plans for the future? And I know you're in high school. Kind of what were your your 5-year plan? What were you gonna do?
I wanted to do construction, like build houses. I wanted to do football, but I got out of football, so my next plan was construction. I wanted to build houses for like famous people who want to work on their houses, like build mansions and stuff like that.
How do you feel this injury is going to impact those goals that you had?
I don't think I can do it no more.
And
I just,
you all can certainly direct questions to Ms. Farr, who is DaQuan's mother and has been walking him through this incident from the beginning as well.
So how has this affected your family?
It has affected my family in many ways, not only with DaQuan being injured and not able to see and have to continue. I have to have surgery again. We're going back to the doctor tomorrow. And like I said, it affected him and it affected me because now I don't work. I had to take off from work in order to take him back and forth to Little Rock 2 to 3 times out of a week. So it's taking our income, it's taking my time. It's not even like taking the time for like not doing anything else. It's just basically like I'm giving all my time to my son. My son is the most important thing in my life. All my children are the most important things in my life. And with this incident that happened to him, I have to look at him every day and wonder why, like, I wasn't there to protect him. That's what they took from me. That's what they took from my family. But most of all, they took my son's eyesight, and not knowing that he won't be able to see out of his other eye because of the strain that he has to put on his right eye because of the defect from his left eye, the injuries that was sustained to his left eye.
All right, any more questions? Look, I appreciate your
I
own
just
time.
one other question, since you basically touched on it, but ultimately at this point, what do we want to take place and should take place in your opinion?
And I'll try to give the abbreviated version this time. We want to see the charges against DaQuan Huey immediately drop. We want to seek a proper criminal investigation into the actions of this police officer. Until that's done, we'll continue to push.
DaQuan, do you feel like you were helping you were trying to diffuse the situation when all this happened? You mentioned it earlier. Is that kind of what your
Yes,
goal
ma'am.
in going out there?
Yes, man, I was trying to make everybody stop, 'cause I didn't want nobody to get seriously hurt. It was too much going on out there.
And it's, you know, it's really important and it's worth saying. Law enforcement put out a statement that does not reflect the evidence in this case. They put out a statement that DaQuan was actively engaged in some sort of physical exchange with someone at the time that he was shot. He simply was not. He was not there fighting anyone. There's no one who's going to testify that he struck anyone at any time. There's no video evidence that will support that. That was a false statement that needs to be retracted. At the time that he was injured, DaQuan was simply retreating from someone who was charging him. He was grabbed from behind by someone he later learned to be an officer. Because someone was charging at him, he tried to maneuver away from the person behind him grabbing him. When he spun around, he was facing a JPX gun that was fired directly into his left eye, and resulting in these serious injuries. That's in fact what happened, and we believe that's what the evidence will reveal. Okay.
And you're not 100% certain that Scott Lillis, who is the person named as a defendant along with the city of Texarkana, Texas as a defendant in that federal complaint, you're not 100% sure that he was in fact the officer who fired the JPX gun?
And so we believe that until law enforcement officially confirms the identity of the officer, that was the identity provided by witnesses on the scene. But again, in terms of transparency by the Texarkana Police Department, it is their responsibility to come forward and identify the officer responsible. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.